Let's Hispanicize it. Welcome to Ray's Talk Show. This is your virtual big brother, Ray Collazo. Ray's Talk Show helps mid-career professionals of diverse communities find wealth in their voice through personal development and online platform building. This is your host, your virtual big brother, Ray Collazo. You can check out Ray's Talk Show live on the Blab platform and at bigbrotherray.com every Tuesday and Thursday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And for our podcast listeners, you can also always check out the podcast version of the show by downloading Ray's podcast on iTunes or anywhere you can subscribe to a podcast. And of course, you can always just catch all of our content, our bonus live stream coverage, and all of our content at bigbrotherray.com. Thank you again so much for joining us. This is such a special episode because this is not only a conversation about one of my favorite topics, the power of podcasting, but we're doing it with two great friends to the show and a big part of the Ray's Talk Show community. But it's also a sneak preview to one of these signature events nationally for content creators and in particular Latino social media influencers. So here at the round table, we have a great friend to the show, Arturo Nava from the Logra to Dream platform. Arturo, bienvenidos. And this is your first time on Blab. We are honored that you're joining us today.
Yes, this is my Blab baptism, so I'm very excited.
Love it.
It gets to be with you guys, great friends, fellow Latino podcasters, and really like in preparation for what's going to be an awesome panel on podcasting at Hispanicize, and we started this tradition a year ago where we had our first podcasting panel at Hispanicize. We were only 6 podcasters, whole conference, and 2,000 bloggers. Now podcasting is taking the next step. So we're going to be there to show people where this is going, how to launch their podcast, and how to use it to build their platforms.
Absolutely. And we really have to thank Arturo Nava, a great friend, because he really is the one that brought us all together. He was the pioneer that spoke up for podcasters everywhere, in a sense, to request of the Hispanicize conference to include a podcasting workshop, and it has been such a great relationship with the Hispanicize family. And I'm going to ask Arturo and Felix in a moment to share a little bit about more what Hispanicize is and what people who may be going to Miami or have heard about the impact of that conference, about what we expect to take place in Miami next week. Another friend to the show is also going to be part of the Hispanicize experience next week in this discussion about the power of podcasting. Who I call Don Felix Montelara from the Potencial Millonario brand. Felix, welcome back, bro.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here, man. I've been waiting for this, to be on your show forever, man.
Oh, please. He's Felix is kidding, of course. He's a frequent contributor and a great member of the family here. And so I did want to note that what is so special about this conversation is that initially we wanted this to include everyone that was going to be part of the panel. And unfortunately, because of various personal commitments and conflicts, we were not able to get Brandy Butler and Marcy Quintana to join us today. But we expect at least Marcy to join us on the podcasting panel next week in Miami. So throughout the show, we will note Marcy and Brandy's, first of all, where their brands are. Marcy Quintana's of the Hispano Entrepreneur podcast, an excellent podcast for in the Spanish language for discussing business issues related to the Latino community, and Brandy Butler of IamBrandyButler.com, and a great business coach for online marketers. So they're not joining us today, but we are going to reference some of their materials and ideas. And in fact, for those watching the replay or watching the video version of the show, Marcy's opening slide is visible to people. So they're here with us in spirit, and they'll be joining us in Miami in a few days. So why don't we start with you, Arturo, if you could, you did reference the fact that we started this sort of Latino podcast collective last year, but why did you think, let's start with, why did you think it was important for us to reconvene in Miami this year at Hispanicize, and why do you think this conversation today is so important for Latinos looking to build an online brand for themselves?
Well, because I think podcasting has come to really a critical point where last year, still a bit too early. Now with the really have, the proliferation of smartphones continues to grow. Podcasting is becoming much more mainstream with big shows that like Serial that really brought it to the forefront. A lot of people are discovering these platforms, and it's becoming a proven model to build an audience and also to build your platform and build a business. And in the Latino community, also as you guys have seen, the podcaster contingent has grown too, and so it's a perfect timing to come back when podcasting, a time when podcasting is now about to become mainstream, and help people that are in their journeys to either start their podcast if they're thinking about it, or turn their podcasting into a business.
That's right. And throughout the show, just because we really want to give people in this conversation as much as possible, sort of the breadth of not just our thoughts on the power of podcasting and why we feel it's such an important tool to, if not for everybody, but for many people that are not they've not taken to this genre to express themselves and help that be part of their online platform building and really helping hone their voice and find their voice and network with like-minded people. But we also want to shout out Latinos that have gotten into the podcast industry doing some exciting things. So throughout the show, I'll be throwing out some shout outs. The first one, of course, was Marcy Quintana and Brandy Butler. The other one, want to make sure the Latinas are represented in this conversation. Liz A. Garcia, who has been a contributor to the Race Talk Show, started her podcast last summer, the Life and Brilliance podcast. So for those people looking for other Latinos that are doing some great things in podcasting, and I have a few others we'll share throughout the show. So in terms of Felix, I wanted you to, before Arturo helps us, guides us and sort of gives people a sneak preview of the workshop and presentation we're going to do live in Miami next Tuesday at Hispanicize. Why don't you help us, for those that are not familiar, Felix, understand what Hispanicize is? It has kind of a funky name, and it's in Miami. It sounds very glamorous and very exciting, and let people know what Hispanicize is all about.
Well, Hispanicize is a week-long event, and it's packed with workshops, speakers, awards, concerts, breakout sessions. I mean, this is a grandiose event, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. This is an event that Hispanics that are influencers in our community attend so they can get a little bit more exposure with brands and other folks like them. So Hispanicize, it's an amazing event. It's something that you have to experience. Manny started this back in 2010, and I think this will be the seventh edition of this. And the last few have been done at the Intercontinental Hotel in Miami, Florida. So they have the layout really, really nicely placed. And the events don't only happen in one hotel, but they happen in different hotels. They happen on vessels out there. I mean, they're happening all over the city. So it's a really nice event. And they're mainly workshops, speakers, and the awards and the concert. So it's very nice. It's a very nice function that Manny Ruiz has put together.
Absolutely, and Manny Ruiz, the brain, the mastermind behind this, does a great job. I would say that I guess kind of the simplest way to put it is that it's probably closely analogous to being the South by Southwest for Latino content creators.
Yes,
so you have,
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have a social media technology brand marketing component, of course, which is probably the largest component. But there's also, as Felix said, a film component, which a great friend of a personal friend who we've worked with for decades now, Calixto Chinchilla, who's the founder of the New York International Latino Film Festival, leads that effort for the Hispanicize community, and there's an independent music wing as well. So you could be a YouTube star, you can be a mommy blogger, you can be a podcaster, you can be a social media marketing professional. You can be an independent musician, director, wannabe filmmaker, journalist.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually going to be a youth journalism focus this year, which is going to be really nice, that our friends at the National Association of Hispanic Journalists are going to do for Spanish language student journalists, which is going to be really interesting. And I believe ESPN and Fox Latino are part of that project. So there's going to be lots going on. It is very Miami Latino. It's very glitzy, very familia, very warm, very Latin, but it's a Latin party. It's confusing. The people jumping in the buses. You don't know where you're going half the time. You don't know the person sitting on your lap half the time. But it's a good time. It's and they do a great job with it. And last year really was a historic moment for Latinos in the podcasting space, which again are those leadership getting us to have an opportunity to have the conversation. Arturo, before we get into what our presentation is this year and kind of our thoughts on where Latinos in podcasting landscape is, why don't you share with us kind of what your reflections are about our first appearance at Hispanicize at our initial podcast?
I think it opened a lot of eyes because many people haven't even listened to podcasts that at least that I talked to at the conference. And this was a very, very early stage platform for many people. So, early stage. So I think we opened the eyes of a lot of other creators, like bloggers specifically, where they realize, hey, this is another platform where I can tell a story, where I can build my platform. And it's a different medium that it's got its advantages and its disadvantages, but the advantages being the intimate connection that you can form with your audience. It's audio, but it can bring you to life as an expert, if you will, and also it can help you with a business venture down the line and with a business platform. So I think it opened a lot of eyes. I think it was very, very well received. I think people were impressed, and I think we got a really warm welcome from everybody, and it was great connecting with a number of people that I personally got to interview, and then they ended up being part of the book. That's where we met Felix at Hispanicize and other great people like Gabi Natale and others, which been great relationships that have been formed. And I don't know of any other event where all these Latino creators from all stripes get together and get to have a good time, strategize, and make fruitful relationships,
Let me tell you something. Not too many men have the confidence in themselves to walk up to Gabi Natal and just start a conversation like Arturo Nava, my man. So I just wanted to put that out there. I was proud of you, brother. So wow, the celebrities, like, it's no big deal. So it must be it's un macho mexicano. But anyway, Felix, I know you actually left the morning that we had the panel at Hispanic Podcasting, but you were one of the handful of podcasters that was at the conference. So I just wanted to get your reflections on the reaction that you got from participants and brands, and to the fact you're one of the few Latino podcasters.
That was very
there.
Interesting when it comes to the brands. I was probably the only podcasters at the breakout sessions with the different brands, and I was trying to explain to them about how I did business, and it really, they were like, I don't know if they really understood what I was talking about. They understood the entire gamut when it comes to the bloggers and how they advertise, how they can reach people, how they can grow their audience and all that good stuff. But when it came to the podcasting, the way I saw it was like they didn't know how to go about it or what to ask. So it was interesting because I do have a blog. I'm also a blogger, but I really wanted to push the podcasting to see how far, and I don't think there was a whole lot of knowledge from the people that were marketing there when it comes to the podcasting. So that was an interesting part for me. It was a lot of fun, but to me, there were the other participants that were there that were bloggers. They were very interested in podcasting. I would go to a session just to sit in and listen to the session. And by the time the session was over, I would walk out and I had people actually tracking me down saying, hey, is there any way you can teach me how to podcast? and I got that, 2 and 3 times per session, different people. So it was really interesting, that the bloggers are interested in headed that way. I just don't think that the knowledge is there for them to do it, or the experience with other folks. So, I think there's a lot of room to grow there, and it will impact if they start podcasting, it will impact the services and the products that they do try to sell. It will impact it, because just to give an example, my blog before I started podcasting was only read in about 38 countries. And once I started the podcast, I surpassed 100 countries of people reading my blog. I get more than that on the podcast, because podcasting is audio, is an easy download, and you can do podcasting while you're in the kitchen, while you're, when I'm doing my little cooking at home and my wife is saying, ¿Por qué comida boricua? I'm like, hey, let's stop that nonsense. But the bottom line is, I can listen to my podcast while I'm doing the dishes, while I'm doing other stuff, while I'm cutting grass. You cannot do that with a blog. You can't cut grass on your tractor and read a blog. It just doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. Same thing with audio, like these blabs. I love them. But the bottom line with these things is, you cannot actually do other stuff and watch this. You cannot go down I-95, and listen, to a blab without, you can listen to it, but you're going to miss a lot of the visual stuff. With a podcast, this is very personal. With a podcast, people normally put in their earbuds or put in, and you're talking to them into their ears. You have their attention. How many times have you been listening to a podcast and people are talking to you and they even get upset? They're like, mira, quítate eso. You're always with that stuff in your ears, Yeah. It happens all the time, because we are paying attention to the audio.
Yeah.
Right. So it's awesome. Right. The podcasting, it just involves a little bit more skills when it comes to the equipment, but it's very simple and self-explanatory once you get into it. It's just the fear of starting it. And Arturo, when we met, you were recording with your iPhone, I remember.
Yes.
And it's that simple. If you have a smartphone, you can podcast. And nowadays you can podcast and stream it live. So you can get on Periscope, and do this type of stuff. Or you can get on any of these new platforms out there where it's just audio, and you can actually put out a short, what I call a micro podcast. Mm-hmm. There's actually an app that I haven't talked about that I use a lot. It's called Hey Hey. And Hey Hey is Hey Hey. You know who one of the Oh, yes, awesome.
Never heard of it. You're always on top of this stuff, Felix. It's unbelievable. I thought you were going to talk about it.
I used to have a joke because Ricky Martin, the singer, was on Hey Hey. He was always at the very beginning. Ricky Martin was one of the first ones to be on Hey Hey. So he talked, and you can reply to him. And he would not directly reply to you, but he would reply in general. So I used to say, hey, my best friend is Ricky Martin. Because I had these conversations in my head with him. But we really did talk when it comes to that, And Hey Hey is only a 15-second micro podcast, 15 seconds. And you can attach like your audio to it, or a link or something like that, and take people back to your podcast, or you can take them back to your website, or you can take them back to your blog. Mm-hmm. So it's really interesting on that end. It's really, really, really nice. But there's more. There's plenty more coming out. We'll talk about Anchor. I was actually on a blab with the Anchor folks. Actually, they're still going on. The last time they went on for 9 hours. So, and I was there 3 hours.
Yeah, no, I was, I want to give a shout, since we're talking about that, shout out to Teo Roxon, and who does a podcast with Carlos Gil, the Hustle Culture podcast. He was anchoring from the Anchor meetup they had last week. So there was a lot of interesting stuff going on. So I thank them for that. And I would definitely have Teo on the show. Arturo, you should have him on the show. He's a Nigerian immigrant, very very focused on sort of an international. He's creating a podcast network for international millennials telling their stories around entrepreneurship and the focus on diversity. So it's Teo's a good guy. And so anyway, so yeah, no, that there's Anchor. The Anchor community is very tight knit, and we have a lot of our friends from Blab and the podcast also overlap with Anchor. So I'll say that yes. Yeah, so I want to just before we get to Arturo's going to lead us in kind of giving people a sneak peek as to our podcast panel on Tuesday at Hispanicize, which you can find at HispaniCizeEvent.com for all the information. It actually starts this Monday with the DMIS Summit, a lot going on in Miami on Monday, starting on Monday. But just to sort of wrap up last year's feedback, absolutely right. I think that Felix is right on the money that fortunately, but unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I think we're probably at least 2 years ahead of the Latino marketing world as it relates to audio and podcasting in the Latino market. And so that's something that, we have to take responsibility for sort of educating our brands around those issues. And then the other piece is, you're absolutely right, Felix, lots of interest by particularly bloggers, particularly Latina bloggers, I would say, more specifically around getting involved in podcasting. But for various reasons, whether it's the miedo of technical, the miedo of accent, the miedo of their voice, the miedo of, getting feedback in something that's a little out of their comfort zone. So we have to help our folks however we can. And it's great to see more Latinas like Marcy and others that are podcasting. And then the last thing is that one of the things that, and you would, Felix, you may not have picked up on this or maybe you did because you got some feedback from other people before the workshop, but there's definitely a strand of Latinos that have a broadcast background in Spanish language radio in the U.S. and in Latin America who, are having difficulties with the increasing corporate influence in Spanish language, radio in this country, and are either getting X'd out or are not really, finding a voice on mainstream radio and are looking for an alternative. So it's interesting that there's people in the radio industry that are our colleagues that are looking into how they can incorporate podcasting into their portfolio. So really interesting stuff. So I'm gonna pass it along now to Arturo Nava again from the Logra to Dream brand, recently published author. So definitely check out logratodream.com and check out everything Arturo's doing in podcasting and internet publishing and public speaking. He was just with my homies from the Cool Speak crew, some of the best Latino motivational speakers in the country. One of my other Mexican homies from the Shy, Arturo got to meet, and it's the vibe is real. Great guys. And so Arturo, let's how for the benefit of people that may be joining us Tuesday or may not be joining us, how are we planning on starting our workshop on the power of podcasting?
Yeah, so the first piece, Ray, actually it's one piece that you're going to talk about, which is the landscape of podcasting and just really understanding where we're at, right, in terms of the size of podcasting, the opportunity, the progress, and where it's going, kind of more of a macro level. And then we're gonna go into how to launch a podcast, and this is where Marcy's gonna focus on, and really what does it take to launch a podcast, and from the beginning, like whether you have a reason to do it, whether you don't have a reason to do it, whether you're just a newbie and are attracted to the medium or whatever it is, there's always it always has to be a strong why behind why you podcast. So in our cases, we wanted to build a platform, and that's why we started podcasting. So she's gonna bring us through her journey on how she found her podcasting voice and why she did it. Also she's gonna talk about finding that niche or that white space in the marketplace where you can play a role because of your uniqueness, because of your expertise, and how you can make a difference. And then we're gonna go into the tools, like what does it take to actually start a podcast, and actually it could be pretty cheap. I remember last year I had very cheap. I spent, I remember my slide, the $237 slide, which is exactly what I spent to.
So why don't you expand on that, Arturo, for people that, and we'll backtrack a little bit on kind of the 30,000 foot view of podcasting, but for people that are like, wow, I'd really like to start podcasting, give people a sample of the kind of what's part of that $275 podcast startup budget that you're
so the
referring
first thing you need is recording software, right? To record your voice. So Pandora costs you like $30, so that you can basically plug into your Skype and then you record your Skype calls. Logo, and in my case, actually, I was able to get it for free, but it could cost you a few bucks here and there. And there's a number of services that you can use for that. Then you need a website. So you need like a headquarters, if you will, because you need show notes and you need to build your platform. So there's a hosting fee, which is not very expensive at all. It could be like $9 per month. Basically, it's not a lot.
Yeah,
on the high end, maybe a few dollars for design here and there. $70 for a theme, so it looks good. And then you need to think about hosting your podcast, because if it gets big, then you're gonna have a problem with the traffic and you're gonna crash your website. So you need to get a hosting provider, which in my case I use Libsyn, which has been very good to me. So I pay was like $30 a month or something like that for Libsyn. So again, very, very cheap to host your podcast. What else? Then for equipment, I mean, some people, can go very, very fancy with like microphones and stuff. Like I started just with a headset, Logitech headset, $29.99 on Amazon, like pretty cheap. I mean, the quality wasn't the best, but it was okay to get started. So that's kind of what you need. And then for editing, it's a free tool, Audacity. You can edit your podcast for free there, and obviously you can use social media to share them and so forth, which is also free. So really, for not a lot of money, but definitely with a lot of effort, you can get started in 2 to 3 months.
So Felix, what microphone do you have?
What
kind of microphone do you have? We're just comparing notes here on equipment. There's a lot of different. There's people that get into the geek equipment piece for sure.
Well,
but
I have from the cheapest possible microphone to one of the most expensive microphones that you can have. Right now, I am trying out. I actually bought. I was in radio for 12 years, so I have connections. So I wanted this vintage microphone that we used when I was back in the 90s doing radio. So I bought a Sesson. It's called I can't say the word, but it's Sennheiser.
Wow.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that's old school.
Nice.
That's a real microphone.
This is a vintage pro microphone, but what I normally use, let me find it here real quick. What I normally use when I'm out in the field recording people, I use this microphone. And this is a $19 Walmart karaoke microphone. Right? So when I record my shows, I record it on this microphone. When I record out in the field, I record with a $19 Walmart microphone. Now, when I don't know if you see me, but I have the second generation Zoom as a digital recorder, right? And you guys seen this? This is what I take. I put a little tripod in the bottom, SD card in here, and it's battery operated. And nice. I'll take this thing off here, and I'll move it over here, and it'll look very professional. And a lot of my older photos that you see me out in the field, I will be using this Zoom. This is a Zoom, and this is the second generation. It's pretty old, and I bought it. I bought it at the lost baggage claim place for like $90. A few years, even before I was podcasting, I figured someday I have a use for it. So it did come in handy. So you don't have to have a very expensive microphone, and you can use like Arturo. When I met you, you were using your iPhone. The iPhone is very good. Yeah, the iPhone is awesome. It's awesome tool to record. It has already the capability of recording in there, and you can actually do what Ray. What is that app called? Because that's a really nice.
This is for the iPhones, the Boss Jock app. It's $9.99 in the iTunes in the iStore, and this is a very good recording because you can actually have carts, so you could actually record intros and outros as one complete episode or show or segment. And the recording quality just on iPhone,
Yes.
even if you have no microphone, it's pretty good.
It is.
Especially if you're in a quiet place and you're close to someone. You can also, well, it's not as easy as it used to be, but you can potentially attach external mics as well. But yeah, you could do worse than be in the field and just use this as long as you're in a quiet place and you're close to people. But I would say on the technical side, there's one of the frustrating elements of podcasting, and it's the nature of just having a lot of equipment in the market, is there's a million ways to do it, which actually makes it more confusing. So you have obviously tons of vendors, whether it comes from recording software, microphones, editing software, mixers, depending how funky you want to get about it. There are differences and nuances as it relates to the PC side and the Apple side, particularly around recording options. But so if you start Googling things, it definitely could seem a little overwhelming, but that's part of what our community is about. You can go to any of our platforms and sign up for any of our email lists over the next few weeks, and we'll definitely get to you. If you request information, if you request follow-up information, we could definitely get to that. The one thing I did want to add, and we'll get into it more in depth in Miami, is on the sort of 50,000 view mark of podcasting. Podcasting is more impactful on the in the media landscape than ever before. I think in the fall, the Serial podcast, and to some degree as well, the startup, some of these big time, very well known NPR franchises on some level kind of put podcasting on the map. And I think you're starting to see much greater interest in podcasting and accelerating over the last year and a half, not just in producers, but in sort of the mainstream media's attention, and sort of legitimacy. It's starting to get more and more. Part of the challenge with podcasting is that we're seeing steady, and we'll have these statistics at the event on Tuesday. We're seeing steady growth in usage, but we're not seeing incredible growth in usage. I would suspect the biggest reason for that, and this is just a theory, is that the Android side has not embraced podcasting in terms of marketing it to their customers the way the Apple side has with the iTunes, with the podcast app, the Purple app, which is now native. It's changing. I don't know. Has Google Play now? Google Play, for people that don't know, Google Play announced in the fall or winter that starting in 2016 they would offer podcasts. Has Google Play accepted you guys' podcast? Last time I checked, they had not accepted mine. So that process seems to be kind of rolling out very slowly.
Mine was accepted, but
was that on Stitcher or
yeah. Google Play?
No, Google Play. I don't. Yeah, Google Play. They announced they're taking podcasts, which is great because that's especially in the Latino community, 2/3, if not more, Android, Latinos in the United States have Android phones, not iPhone. So that, and particularly for our market, that's a challenge for us because a lot of people, probably the preponderance of people, are listening to podcasts with their phones. So that is part of the reason I suspect that it's not growing like exponentially, it's just growing steadily. But the biggest, the other two market factors, one is that all studies show, and you guys know this, but for the benefit of our audience and listeners, all studies know that podcast listeners become podcast addicts. So your average podcast listener listens to 6 hours plus a week. It rivals the amount of listening, audio listening that they do to mainstream radio or downloadable music. So it becomes a big part of your listening habits for some of the reasons that Felix discussed. That continues to be the case. The last thing, which is going to be, again, an opportunity but a challenge, is that we are getting a glut. Some would argue as the podcast paradise effect.
That's true.
We are getting a glut of podcasters in the market. I would say it feels like it's doubled over the last year and a half. I don't know. Maybe that's, I'll double check the numbers, but it certainly has grown. I mean, there's literally tens of thousands of people in the United States podcasting on a regular basis. And, it's great. And it's a challenge, right? Because it does create a glut, and iTunes and some of the various directories for podcasts are, still trying to figure out how to guide people and properly categorize shows and sort of properly weight the popularity and the efficacy of shows to highlight them. And for the Latino podcast community, that becomes a challenge because there aren't so many Latino-based flavored or themed or led podcasts that it should become. It's such a glut that it's hard to sift through us. Is that there really just isn't a clearinghouse, in fairness, to really identify clearly. So if you type in a Latino podcast, Arturo might show up, I might show up, Felix might show up, and then 20 podcasts that haven't uploaded a show in 5 years. Mm-hmm. So and many times the standard ways you would think you could find us in searches, it just is kind of a roll of the dice. So those are some of the issues that we're dealing with. But fortunately, we're getting more and more podcasts, Latino podcasters in all kinds of genres, both in English and Spanish. NPR, Latino USA's program is starting to weight more of their content in the podcast genre. So they're doing a short political show we call The Thick. Our homie Julio Varela hosts that show with Maria Hinojosa. And so, we're starting to see examples of kind of mainstream media that's geared toward the Latino community utilizing the podcast genre. So is there anything else on sort of the big picture of podcasting, either you, Arturo, or Felix?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the future. How do you see the future, particularly for Latino content creators? Yeah,
so I think that long term, I think it's kind of like the turtle, the tortoise and the hare. I think at some point in the next 5 years ago, the people like us that have really invested the time to create, the credibility in the space as really broadcasters, I think are gonna see the benefits of it in a major way. I think short term, I think people do have to, tame their expectations. None of us at this point have become internet celebrities, or can even. I think it's safe to say I don't know if there's any Latino, maybe one or two, who are basically celebrities already, who could make a primary. Make this a primary financial vehicle. But on the flip side, if you go into it understanding it's a vehicle for networking, finding your voice, honing your craft, creating an intimate relationship with your core online community, and really establishing a level of credibility in your space. Again, for every 2,000, there's one podcaster for every 2,000 bloggers, and that probably has not changed significantly. So, it's a great way to stick out. It's a great way to network. It's a great way to find your voice, and it's also a great way to create another distribution channel. So I do my shows on Blab. I have live video. I have live. I have taped video we can use for other things, repackaged. I have audio from these shows that we can use as our podcast. I know, Felix, you live stream some of your audio on Mixlr, and this is, people do have to, when they're thinking about podcasting, they have to think about it as, at the very least, a alternative for people that may like your content but don't have the time to sit, or just don't. It's not in there. They're not the kind of people that are going to sit there and look at a video for 20 minutes on their phone, but they'll listen while they're on the train, or it's just more. They'll give you more time in that way. So that's kind of where I see it. I think the biggest challenge for us, though, is to figure out how to market to the Latino community this incredible content outside of the standard channels that we have. And maybe it's something we just put a website together, because if I went to iTunes, I would never find all you guys. If you're just going by the standard directory. That's I think the biggest challenge. Yeah. And I know, Felix, that's a particular, maybe you should speak to that. And I know you're going to talk about this Tuesday, but the particular challenges and opportunities for Spanish language podcasts. So I do my show primarily in English. I throw in the Spanglish, and we certainly are Spanish language friendly. Arturo does whatever the guest is comfortable with, but primarily I'd say 70-30 English, maybe 80-20 English.
I'm doing more Spanish,
and then Felix,
lately,
primarily
so
Spanish.
I think can I get to 50-50?
That's great. Yeah, and Marcy Quintanas, I believe, is primarily Spanish.
Actually,
she'll do some English, but primarily in Spanish.
She's got both. She does
have a mix here.
Episodes in English and Spanish. So she does she records two versions every time she interviews. a lot of work.
Wow, that's
And,
impressive.
you know,
That's
I've
great.
wrestled
Takes a lot
with
of
that,
talent.
and I have my Spanish podcast is Potencial Millonario. Then the English one is The Potential Millionaire. But the only time I've put up anything for The Potential Millionaire podcast has been video, because I've interviewed, like Arturo, I've interviewed you in English, you remember, for your book. So, and I've interviewed other people. So I put it that way. I have a video podcast, because a lot of people don't understand video podcasting is just not about the audio. You can have a video podcast also. So I shoot that in there, and I've been working on starting the English audio version of it, because I don't want to mix them up. I have 38% of the people who visit my podcast are from the United States. 38. The rest are other countries that, you know, that speak Spanish or don't even speak Spanish. We have Spanish speakers in those countries. It's led by Mexico, Spain, Argentina, Peru. Mm-hmm. So those are my 5 core countries that I cater to. And I'll put up blogs with stuff from their country so they can see, hey, this guy's at least trying to get, you know, el nuestro, right? Because I have some of that stuff there. But the bottom line is, think about the opportunity out there. If you're a blogger, you already have all this material written up. It is written, and you want to put it into audio. Think about the opportunities in these countries that are coming up. The other thing that I've seen with podcasting is like you guys were talking about, they go mainly through some type of Android or Google to get to my show. So, you know, I mean, that's what I see most of the time. My iOS, my Apple people who listen, is actually a 1% or 1.5, sometimes less than that. So, wow. and it's telling me, my stats will tell me that they're listening on a computer. Okay. And let me tell you this, I will talk about this and I'll throw this stat out, but this is what I'm going to be talking about in Hispanicize, is that 93%, according to a Pew Research, 93% of the Latino age 12 and older listen to the radio. And guess what's coming to the radios and vehicles in the future? I mean, in the near future. Mm-hmm. Okay, is the Apple podcasting format, yes, and the Google.
Yeah. Apple Play, yeah, and Google Play. That's right. And Stitcher's already in some cars. Stitcher's already in, you know, so cars. That's so it's out. Coming to where you can listen to this, you know, these podcasts at your leisure when you want. Let me ask you a question, Felix. I'm curious because, our friend Albert Garcia, who's going to be joining us as one of our helpers, he'll be helping us on Tuesday. Stitcher is in Chevrolets, yeah. So there's definitely some cars that's already being offered. I did want to mention, Felix. I have a question for you, Felix. And also for you, Arturo, because you do a fair amount of Spanish language content. Is that Felix? How was the demographics of your Spanish language audience impacted your content? Because if you're telling me you have Spanish speaking people in the United States, Spanish speaking people in Mexico, and Spain, just those 3 countries alone, the Latino communities and the Spanish speaking communities are so different. So how does that impact kind of your because those are the people that are attracted to your message, but those are very different groups of people. So I'm just curious, how has that impacted the evolution of your Well, content?
I realized early on that I couldn't talk about 401ks. You know, I'm a financial podcaster. I talk about finances. So I cannot talk about a 401k in every show. I have to talk about a retirement system. So whatever the retirement system is in your country, you know, these are the guidelines that you're going to follow. And I'll do the research for different, especially my 5 core countries, to find out what is it that is being used. And then I'll talk about those 5. So when I was in radio, I learned this on radio. When I was in radio, yo siempre decía, I will always say, bueno, como dicen en México, right? O como dicen en Puerto Rico, o como dicen allá en la isla, you know, wherever it was. Right. And I would say the word that meant whatever it was in 3 different countries, right? And that attracts people, because when you talk their language, you get to their hearts and people will listen. So, I've always throw something in there for that specific country when I'm talking. And I may not do it in every show, but every show has some country. So I may not do 3 or 4 countries in a show, but every show has a country. Mm-hmm. And I'll try to invite, when I have my guests, I try to invite them. And even if they're from here in the U.S., but they're de descendencia mexicana, I make it a point to talk about Mexico, and where their family are from. And, same thing with Spain and where their family are from. And I make it a point to, and then in my hashtags for that show, I put the country's name.
Very cool. Very cool. I had, Arturo, a kind of a similar question to you. What's so great, one of the great things about your show is that you interview like a personal friend of mine, by the way, David Chavez, a great guy, who's one of my guys, and part of the NCLR network as well. He, second generation Mexican American. You've had people even from multiple generations in this country, and then you have recently arrived immigrants. So I know you have fans from certainly throughout Latin America and also the U.S. So I'm just curious, what's the reaction to your audience to these diverse sorts of Latino voices, both in English and Spanish?
What's interesting about the podcast is that I think people gravitate towards this common idea of the American dream, in Lograr Tu Dream. That's so right. Whether they're Mexican or they're Latinos living here, or even there's a lot of people also in South America that tune in, and some in Europe, not a lot, but some in Europe. They all kind of identify with this idea and with this thirst for knowledge of, hey, how do you get ahead? So there's a lot of curiosity to learn about the stories of different people that have faced different challenges, and whether it's entrepreneurial or in the business corporate world or the political world, they want to know. And so I think that I see that as a common thread, like in my case, because I'm Mexican, many Mexicans identify with it, and then Mexicans that either like emigrated, thinking of emigrated, or have been here for a long time. That's another common thread. But I really tailor everything around this central idea of the podcast. It's mostly interviews. I do some solo shows once in a while, and actually I want to do more solo shows and kind of get more of my own ideas and thoughts out there more frequently. But it's been mostly about the stories of all these great people.
Arturo, so give us another area that we're going to discuss on our upcoming panel on the power of podcasting at the upcoming Hispanicize conference, which is basically the Latino South by Southwest, going to be the place to be this Monday, starting Monday throughout the week in Miami at the
the other big areas is what Felix is going to talk about, really about how to build the audience, how to build your audience, and sharing his his take on that, and I'll let Felix address that piece.
Give us a tip how to build the tribe, Felix. Give us a tip. Give us a tip. Let me get my notepad. Hold on.
I always say here, that's exactly what I say on my show. I always say, señoras y señores, saquen lápiz y papel, porque ahora le voy a dar un poquito de información y necesito que escriban esto, right? So, I've always said that. Right? I've always said, and let me tell you something. To build a tribe, you have to. It's about marketing. That's what it comes down to, and you have to take the examples of traditional radio, traditional marketing. If I show you a swoosh, right? A swoosh symbol, what is that? That would be Nike, right? I mean, if I talk about Apple, do we think in the apple that we're gonna eat? No, we think about Apple, the phone, right? So when you're building your tribe, you have to think about it in those terms. You have to create a brand. Okay. And that brand has to have your voice. And this is why at Hispanicize is going to be really interesting when I talk about this, because that I'm going to home in exactly on that. Your voice is your brand. What you put out in that brand through that voice has to reflect the values of what you are trying to do. So you cannot have a children's book, right? And your logo is a 6-inch stiletto with a beautiful ankle and a negligee all the way up to the hip. It's not going to work because you're not conveying the message that you want with your children's book, right? So for you to do that, blogging is a really important, like Arturo said at the beginning, when you're setting up your podcast, you have to have a page, right? You have to have a web page. Well, I recommend that web page is a blog. That way, when you put your show notes and you put everything in there, okay, you're repurposing this content. So once you repurpose that content, you put it out in the different, what I call the traditional social medias now, Facebook, Twitter, all these ones that I don't even use, Vine, I mean, name it, YouTube, you can just go on and on and on, repurposing the same content, but bringing them back to one place. So which you select which place do you want to bring them back? Do you bring them back to your podcast? Because now there are services out there in podcasting that will give you that page, that landing page for you to bring people back to. So you can do also that. But the message is, how do you expand this, by bringing other, and here's the other thing. You can expand your tribe by, even if we spoke Spanish, think about this. Arturo, en México, los boricuas no hablan como los mexicanos, right?
Claro.
So, pues, see, if I have a product that I'm pushing, that I really want to sell, y yo lo quiero vender en México, and this is what I'm going to be talking about in Hispanicize and a bunch of other tips like this. But just to give you this one, there's something called, from traditional marketing, called the native language assistant. Okay, they call it NLA. And with the native language assistant, that doesn't mean that it's a different language. I can partner up con un mexicano in Mexico that's already made it, that wants to actually make some money with me. And we can do the Potencial Millonario Purito Mexicano, right?
Like a franchise.
Correct. Exactly. Or licensing, right? If you use what is that called now? The gyms that are popping up all over for the strength workout. CrossFit. CrossFit is a licensing process. It's not a franchise. They license the name.
Yeah.
So if you do that and you partner up, you can partner up in Nicaragua, in Honduras, in Mexico, in Peru. I mean, you can do this. You can do the same thing over and over again with the same content, and just tweak it to the nuances of these countries, and you will make money. You will make a lot of money that way if you have a product.
Arturo, give us one of your tips on thoughts in terms of building your podcast community.
I think for me, it's all about value. So giving people what they want, giving them value, and listening intently. So really trying to get people to speak up and tell you what they're inspired about, what they're looking for, what's missing, and then tailoring that content to them. And not only the content, but also that can inform like your next steps, like product creation, or in my case, the book, and so forth. So I think that's key. And like Felix mentioned, the brand building is really important to really make it very, very clear what you stand for, what your program stands for, and so that in one sentence they can tell you what your platform is all about, and just being a good person, just being like, just giving, helping others, and living your mission, being authentic, I think is very important. I think people nowadays can see through what's authentic and what's not in terms of everything, brands, products they buy, people, and everything. So really having your heart in the right place, because as you attest, I mean, this is a labor of love, and you got to have a mission to do this, because podcasting is not something that you make money right away, at least not in Latino podcasting. Hasn't gone out that way. Even in general market, only very, very few are making the big bucks. Most people are not. Most people, I mean, they'll generate some income of the podcast, but it's something you really need to love, have a mission, and then obviously it has to be something that can lead you to something much bigger in the future.
That's right.
And before we get to the next segment that we're going to touch on at the Hispanicize conference on the power of podcasting, again, I want to thank people for listening to Race Talk Show Live as well as Race Podcast with our great friends Felix Montalada and Arturo Nava. I wanted to also give a shout out to a colleague of mine who just started her own podcast, Brenda Gonzalez Richards, who I affectionately refer to as the notorious BGR. She just started the Tamarindo podcast with a colleague, Luis Octavio, out of Los Angeles. Two very accomplished and personable Latino professionals in Southern California, and they interviewed one of the, I don't know if you guys have seen the Me Too YouTube and video brand, where they do some interesting, funny, provocative segments with cholas. So one of the cholas was on the first show, so really provocative, really interesting, awesome. really cutting edge, really cool. And so I just wanted to give a great friend, Brenda Gonzalez Richards, and she'll be on the show soon, and hopefully I definitely have recommended that she loops you guys into her show. So definitely collaboration, which we're going to talk about more Tuesday. The power of collaboration is also a big part of should be a part of your plan. Arturo, give us another segment we're going to touch on at the podcast panel.
It's the next one. The big elephant in the room is monetization. How do you make money off the podcast, right? The moolah, and this is this segment that Brandy was going to talk about. Unfortunately, she's going to be out because she's having surgery, but we can certainly cover this topic. And really, there's a number of ways to make money of the podcast that have really appeared organically. And one is coaching. So you might attest, like there's a number of people that reach out and say, hey, I need help with this or whatever, I need your advice, and then there it is, like a coaching opportunity. So some people are doing like one-on-one coaching. Also group coaching is being popular because you can leverage your time better. It's more scalable, it's more profitable too, and you can serve the clients well. The other one is products and services. This is one actually I'm working on now on my course, like an online course to help my community start and grow their businesses. And so this is something that has proven to be a very interesting area to develop a business because it's very scalable. You do it once, and if you have really good content, it's priced right, it responds to what people really want, then it can make you a lot of money because instead of selling it at like a book, you sell it at $10-15, you can sell it at hundreds of dollars, right? And that can become a really interesting source of income. So the gold standard for this obviously is Podcaster's Paradise, which you mentioned earlier, Ray, and on the general market, JLS killing it, like $3.5 million a year or something.
He's averaging about $350,000 a month.
Imagine that. So it's kind of it's amazing.
I mean, that's a month. That's a lot of money.
A month. So imagine the potential. It's all about teaching people how to grow and monetize and create their podcast. And it's just a lot of money. So even if you are able to get out a course which is only a fraction of that and build a community around it, because what I found about courses, because I've taken a couple myself, is that you go for the content but you stay for the community, and the community you build is very, very important. So that's another monetization opportunity. The next one is sponsorship. So getting sponsorships on your podcast. On that one you need a certain critical mass to be able to get people to actually sponsor you, or get really creative in terms of how you structure it. Maybe it's about an affiliate commission or something, and you exchange that for the mentions in your show. So that's another area.
Felix, you have a thought on this monetization question?
Yeah. I got to give you an example from Hispanicize 2015. When I went over there, I actually got on Hispanicize 2015, had a list of people who wanted to share a room. And I got onto that list, and I ended up sharing a room with a young man from Puerto Rico. So happened that he was from Puerto Rico, and we stayed there for the entire week, and we shared our thoughts. And this young man has a really nice community. He's on 2 major radio station, one in Puerto Rico and one in New York. So he actually already had a sponsorship through JetBlue. That's how he got there. So the man is already working on this. We get into the conversation on how to monetize this a little bit better. And I asked him, were there other people doing something similar in Puerto Rico? And he told me yes. Well, he called me the other day because he's going to be again in Hispanicize 2016. And he called me. He says, hey, I took your advice. I hooked up with 2 guys that have a different audience. But what we did was we added up our views and our visits and all those stats as one. So whenever we get a sponsor, they get shared. The sponsor gets on 3 different podcast platforms and all that good stuff. And we're charging $3,500, per, and he didn't want to tell me per how much, but it was $3,500 for whatever it was. And I was like, very interesting, So this is just one idea of monetization that we just discussed, and he took action. And that's part of the idea with all this. What Arturo's talking about, you have to take action on these things and to make them happen. Because if you sit there, even if you have 30,000 Twitter followers, and you sit there and you're waiting for Goya to come and sponsor your show, it's not going to happen. You have to write to Goya. You have to reach out to Goya. You have to reach out to their marketing people and make that happen. So, there's all these ways. And remember, your podcast can be what I call the sister product to your blog. The podcast can be the sister product to your service. So whenever you have a product or service or something like that, the podcast will always have a play in it, especially because you're talking into people's ears. Another strategy that we don't use, but it comes from, that's one of the first persons that I actually studied when I started all this was Pat Flynn. If you know who Pat Flynn is all about affiliate links. Affiliate link, even if you don't have a sponsor on your show, you can have an affiliate links, like let's say Audible. And you can say that it's sponsored by Audible to get that link out there so people you get your percentage, right, from that sale.
Yes.
I got creative with a company called Ninja Pillow. I had a Kickstarter campaign that I started, Ninja Pillow. So today, my only sponsor on all my podcasts is Ninja Pillow, right at the end. Why? Because Ninja Pillow is one of these companies I control. So if I put Ninja Pillow in there and it sells, why not put it as a sponsor? So you can actually even create your own sponsors.
Yes.
And I know it sounds creepy, but it works.
No,
that's true. No, and Pat Flynn, and I think even John Lee Dumas till maybe recently, the bulk of the revenue they were getting from the podcast was from affiliate relationships, not straight advertising, relatively speaking. So that is definitely something that you want to look at. And when you're starting, I would say, now maybe it's a little different if you already have an audience from another medium, like the radio announcers Felix you're friends with from the island, but in general, if you look at it even at the very least as a marketing vehicle for other things you're doing, that's still a tremendous resource for revenue. And I'm thinking even about our friend Ray Ortega from the Podcasters Roundtable podcast that basically developed this skill set and developed a niche as a podcaster that focused on sort of podcast production. And he was able to get a job, a day job producing podcasts for a national company. So, there's a few different ways where roads it can lead you from a financial perspective, but you definitely should not expect that in the very beginning you're going to have the kind of critical mass audience that's gonna elicit immediate direct advertising revenue. That's likely not going to happen.
But you know what? Like if you have an audience, even if it's small, if it's committed, you can monetize. Felix mentioned the affiliate relationships, and monetizing on high ticket items it's a great strategy. Like courses, for example, that is like a big opportunity for people to be affiliates, because the commission is almost like 50%. So it's pretty interesting. A couple of other revenue streams. One is actually I started to speak first for free, and now actually trying to get paid speaking gigs, which is pretty cool.
That's right. Yep.
And just by getting out there, because the people recognize that you have a platform, and in my case, I also wrote a book, which has helped tremendously. I really recommend everybody out there that have a book within them to write it, because it just is a huge brand builder. It really sets you apart, and it can lead to more opportunities, whether it's speaking or other business opportunities. So speaking, it's one that it's very interesting, because when you start off, they can pay you like maybe $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, but then the rates go up pretty high. What is that? That's it.
What is that?
This is one of my latest books. I did not write this book. I commissioned this book, and this book just won an EFL award for financial literacy for children's books.
Awesome.
And
wonderful.
We're gonna go out there to pick up the award, but it was commissioned. I actually paid the author to get this book done for me. So I didn't have to write the book itself, but it won an award. This is my first award-winning book.
That is fantastic.
So
that is awesome.
Oh, congratulations,
awesome. Arturo.
This is
there's lots of opportunities.
This is Logra. I don't know if it's
too bright. Yeah. Can you dim it a little?
Yeah, a little bright. Yeah.
It's too bright, but anyways, it's the Logra to Dream book. You can find it on Amazon at logratodream.com/Amazon book, or just search Amazon for Logra to Dream, and it really.
Everybody's got the books.
It's a great tool, and then you can. You also monetize the book, right? So it's not a lot of money, but it adds up over time. And if you do a book,
absolutely, and the book doesn't go anywhere. It'll make you income for your entire life.
And I definitely. And then you can do like different formats. Mm-hmm. You can do audiobook, you can do paperback, you can do Kindle. Nowadays, it's really not that hard to self-publish. That's what I did. So you don't need a publisher anymore. And so really the opportunities are out there. And so it's just really a matter of getting started, build a platform, not just a podcast, and then start thinking about, okay, how are you going to monetize? And I really advise people just to go one step at a time and really focus on one thing that you can do really, really well. If you're going to go after sponsorship, just go after sponsorship really, really hard and focus on that. If it's a course, do the course. If it's a book, do a book. Whatever it is, and then things will start to happen. But you gotta definitely have patience.
Arturo, let's touch on one last area that we're gonna be discussing at the Hispanicize conference coming up in the Intercontinental Hotel in Miami this Tuesday. Our panel's on Tuesday. The conference starts with the Dime Summit, which is at an offsite hotel in Miami Beach on Monday. There's a lot happening. I don't know if you guys got your invitation to the McDonald's cruise, which is going to be really cool. I'm going to miss it. Unfortunately, I won't be there Wednesday, but there's film festival, there's music, it's a great place for social media influencers, bloggers, YouTubers.
What is it?
There. There's the McDonald's cruise is Wednesday, brother. I'll forward you the link. So I won't be there, but you can represent for us. So I'll be flying Las Vegas on Wednesday for other business. But the Arturo, so is there another segment or another element of our presentation you wanted to note for our Race Talk Show listeners?
No, I think I think actually there's another piece that you're also going to touch on, Ray, which is the other platforms, and I know Felix is going to touch a little bit on that too on his presentation, which is like all these other platforms that you can use to repackage your content and leverage your content that you're gonna create anyways in a podcast. So like Blab is a great example, Clamor, and then other platforms that you can use as feeders like Periscope, right? That you can use like a Periscope, or you can even do a Periscope and then you save it, and that's a podcast. Or Anchor, which is like really cool tool that you guys introduced me to. That is like small audio snippets that you can use as feeders and as seeds. That
yeah, it's like audio. It's Vine and Twitter together for audio.
Yes,
because you get the feedback and you get
Right.
the short doses. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I mean, look, I'm although I'll always be a podcaster to heart, and I believe in the genre. There's no question that video, on some level, you have to incorporate video into what you're doing. And Blab is a great example where someone that even started as a podcast, which Race Podcast started, strictly as an audio venture, is able to do the show now in video form and repackage it in many ways. And you can literally be broadcasting via audio and video on multiple channels at the same time. So hypothetically, if I had my iPads and phone set up a certain way, we could be on Periscope at the same time. We could be on various other video channels, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, hypothetically. Felix live streams his audio on Mixler. And there's other ways you can do that. I mean, hypothetically, you could be on multiple channels in video and audio at the same time.
Spreaker.
And drawing traffic. So many blabbers will sort of do, and I've done this many times, go on Periscope or Facebook Live or Mevi and basically say, hey, I'm going to be on Blab in 5 minutes. Go to my website. So you can use it as a call to action, and all of this can sort of play off each other. And you're absolutely right. And like you said, Felix, your podcast could be a video podcast. So there's definitely a lot to it. So Felix, as we wrap this up, just wanted to get your thoughts. Anything else you'd like to share to our Race Talk Show community, our Race Podcast community, about the power of podcasting, and anything else about the Hispanicize conference you wanted to share?
Well, I want to share about the Hispanicize conference, since that is our main topic here. And basically, the Hispanicize conference, it's one of these awesome week party, but it's a party where you actually learn a lot. I mean, it is a party. There is no.
Yo decía a mi mujer que yo estoy trabajando en Miami y tú estás mencionando tanto party. Okay, just relax. It's very serious business. Come on.
Actually, last year I'm
with two very serious guys like you. It can't be that much fun.
Hey, I got to take a photo with Miss USA last year. She was standing in a corner back there in the dance room, and I was like, I have to go over there and just take a selfie with this young lady.
Con respeto, Miss USA. Arturo, what was who was the real tall novela star? She has a very funky name. She has a very long name, like.
I can't remember.
Anyway, there was some celebrities there. There's no doubt.
Yes.
Yeah, there were.
No, it's a lot of fun. It's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, but not too much. Yes, it's.
Let me tell you.
I'm sorry, Felix, I cut you off.
No, that's awesome, because it is definitely a lot of fun, but you go learn a lot. But here's the most important thing: is the connections that you make with people while you're there. Especially, like I met you guys there. That was one of the highlights.
That's great. I'd never heard of you. Yeah,
that was one of the highlights. For me, was to meet you folks over there. So and I think there's a lot of good opportunity there if you're really considering blogging, if you're really considering forwarding your brand somehow. That is the place. That is the conference that you really want to go to and experience what influencers can do when they get together. And especially, we're talking here Hispanic influencers. And, you don't see this every day. You don't see this a lot. And it's one of those conferences that you can bet your money that you're going to get your money's worth out of it. So that's all I got to say when it comes to, Hispanicize. Now, when it comes to podcasting, I recommend that if you have a book in you, that if you are a blogger, that if you have a product or service and you want to put that out to the world, podcasting is the way to go. If you're a brand and you're not podcasting, you're losing out on opportunities.
Absolutely. And we're going to get into lots of tips, and we'll continue this conversation on many. We love to talk about podcasting in the industry and help people develop their online platforms here at Race Talk Show, particularly people that like my friend Brenda Gonzalez Richards. She said, you know, Ray, you've been talking to me about this for a while. I started listening to your show. I started listening to other podcasters, and the conversations you had with particularly Liz Garcia from the Stay Limitless podcast gave me inspiration to take the plunge. So just really proud of Brenda, and that's the kind of inspiration we like to provide here at Race Talk Show. Arturo, you are the ringleader. I always want to thank you for not only your friendship, but you opening the door for us podcasters. Last year, I felt like because they have a Tecla Award, so they have a series of awards for Latinos doing wonderful things in their particular genre, and we don't have an award yet for best Latino podcaster, but so it was almost like being last year being the podcast panel was like being bacheteros in like the 80s. Like a couple people listened, but nobody really understood the power of it until a few years later. But we got a great response, and I think everyone, including ourselves, were pleasantly surprised at the feedback. But Arturo, Hispanicize, this time in the podcast movement, pardon the pun, Felix, that we're a part of here.
Yes, no, I mean, I think it's exciting. It's an exciting time to go back, and podcasting is getting bigger, and I think we're inspiring a lot of people to get in the game, to do more. And I'm just happy that we're building this great community of great people. We're working together, we're collaborating, and that's what it's all about, man. And just the broader mission of really elevating our people and helping them progress.
Absolutely. So the last thing I'll say on that is that I have to give it really speaks to the beauty of our community, but particularly, of course, our host, Manny Ruiz, and his team at Hispanicize, is that it is such a warm atmosphere. I would imagine there was people like myself that knew a few people there, but you don't know what to expect, and you perceive people certainly online and people that have these large brands and large platforms, but we still are very much so I would encourage people that maybe haven't gone or feel like they're not sort of qualified to sort of be at something like that. You might be a student that's maybe in social media marketing or public relations, or just has a particular talent or skill they want to share. Just go, get out there. You'd be surprised how quickly you could connect with like-minded people and how open Manny's team is to helping people make those connections. And it's unbelievable. And I go to a lot of events with these brands and other things I do in my career. And, to be able to walk in a lobby with, a nice crowd, but not an overwhelming number of people, to be able to walk up to people that are the Latino marketing reps for major advertising agencies, major brands, Fortune 500, Fortune 100, Fortune 50, Fortune 12. And they give you the opportunity to learn about your product, your service, your brand. They're interested in what your thoughts are on the industry. You can really make, if you have an opportunity, if you live in Florida, you're debating whether to stop by, you can definitely, you can make an impact fairly quickly if you have a distinct thing in podcasting. There maybe there'll be 20 of us this year, but it's still a small group. Felix, let people know where they can find you on social media, and any other shout outs or anything else you'd like to add to this episode of Race Talk Show.
Well, first I want to say thank you to Donna for hanging out. She says we're killing her here with our party conversation. But I can be found at potencialmillonario.com, and that's in Spanish, Potencial Millonario, or in English, THED, potentialmillionaire.com. So either of those will take you to the same place. I do have English blogs in there. I have over 500 blog posts, and people tell me, hey, where's the English stuff? Go to the tab that says blog post in English, and you will find them. There's over 200 of those just in English. There's videos, there's all kinds of stuff, but Potencial Millonario is the base. Everything is in there. Anything that I sell is in there. I've actually put up a free course for podcasting on it that you can sign up for. It was not created by me. It's a third party one, and right now it's free. And I recommend that if you're interested in learning a little bit, it's a really good course just to get familiarized with what podcasting is all about. And that's it. Potencialmillonario.com. I have a book since 2009. I collect royalties. I compete with my wife on who collects more royalty every quarter, and she normally beats me, but she has 5 books. So, it's just one of those things where I think
pound for
it's
pound,
sheer amount. But I think the last quarter I took her by a couple dollars. So, like I said, potencialmillonario.com is where you can find me, and I'm accessible. I will return your call. I will email you. If you email me, I will hit you up on messaging. If you message me, you will never get a robot. I'm not that important. I have enough time to talk to people. I've always make time. I just had an experience where I try to reach out to an influencer on something that actually I was doing for this. I wanted to do some research on it. And the person basically wrote back to me and said, I really don't have the time to talk to you. And you know what I thought? That's a sad life. That is one sad life. If you don't have 2-3 minutes.
In the time they wrote the email, they could have talked to you.
Of course.
Correct. Of course.
But,
So potencialmillonario.com is the place. If you want to go to Hispanicize, it will be April 1st through, I think, the 6th, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, it's the
4th through the 8th. 4th through the 8th.
1st through the 8th.
4th.
5th. Okay. And it'll be at the Intercontinental Hotel in Miami. So if you wanna try to go by and like sneak in, I think
you hang out in the lobby, just look for us.
I think they'll let you sneak in for a little bit, and then
I think I went last year.
Manny said this year security's gonna be beefed up.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, no, definitely, like,
come on, Latino, right? We're like we don't have a badge, but
no, and let me tell you, if you're a Latina blogger influencer, I know, right? Why? I mean, they remember they were doing nails, hair.
I'm with him. Where's your badge? I'm with him.
Massages. It was incredible. Yeah. Definitely want to shout out again our colleagues who are not on this episode, but they'll be with us next week. Marcy Quintana from Hispano Entrepreneur. Definitely check out her web platform and her podcast, and Brandy Butler on Twitter. I am Brandy Butler, and just look up Brandy Butler. She's an amazing business coach for online marketers. Arturo, again, shout out your brand and where people can find your book.
Yes, so they can find everything at logratodream.com. And the book they can find at logratodream.com/Amazon book. Or if you just go to Amazon and just, search for Logra to Dream, it'll come up. It's on paperback, on Kindle and audio. So hope you enjoy it. And on Twitter, Logra to Dream, Facebook, Logra to Dream, everywhere. It's just Logra to Dream. Same brand. You can tell I'm a brand guy. But if you're a Latino creator of any kind, you got to be there, because you'll find the people, the inspiration you need. And you'll come out of there with the contacts and more insights to get on going to get to the next level. So don't miss it. Don't miss it.
Absolutely. And definitely want to thank Felix, Arturo, our colleagues who are not with us today again, but Marcy and Brandy and Donna and Albert, of course, some of our audience participants. And you were listening to Ray's Talk Show. We've been talking about the power of podcasting and getting everybody ready for Hispanicize. It's going to be a wonderful event. You can check out, I won't be doing the live show because I'll be traveling all next week. But let me tell you something. If you have plenty of time, I need to take a breather so you guys can catch up on all this incredible content I had earlier this week. Another wonderful member of the Latino social media community, Lorraine Laddish, from the Viva 50 brand, who was on the show on Tuesday. It was an excellent conversation. You can definitely check out the replay of the podcast or video. And we literally have hundreds of episodes of the podcast and dozens of video versions of the show. So people like George Torres, who's going to be at Hispanicize, the Urban Jibaro. We had a wonderful conversation with him a few months ago. You can check out that episode, as well as Melanie Mendez Gonzalez, who's going to be at Hispanicize from the Camps Means What brand. So, you can definitely binge watch Ray's Talk Show over the next several days while and definitely check us out on social media. And you can just check everything out at BigBrotherRay.com. All of our content at BigBrotherRay.com. Thank you all so much, guys, and I'll see you in Miami.
I'll see you there. Well,